fourth graders, and also welcome to the third graders and fifth graders that are joining us today. I hope that everybody's doing well, that you are keeping yourselves busy while we're at home, and just know that we are all of your teachers, everyone at High Point is thinking about all of you and looking forward to when we're going to be back together. And I just wanted to take a look around here. So where do you guys think I am right now? I'm not in the library. I'm not even inside my house. I'm actually in my backyard. I'll give you a little look around. Here I'm sitting, there's some grapes growing above me, a little bird feeder. And here's my garage. Oh, there's even a swimming pool. It's way too cold to swim in it right now. But I decided to give you a little bit of an outside lesson today, partly because it's just nice to get some fresh air. It's good for me. It's good for you. I hope you're getting out for some walks and some time in your yards and things like that with your families. But today, because we are going to be starting to read the Cook Prize books, the books that are for this Student Selected Book Award for books about STEM, science, technology, math, engineering, and math. We're going to be starting these today. And the first book we're going to read together, I'll show you all of them in just a minute, is really about plants and nature. And so I thought we'd just sort of get into things that way by being outside. So what we're going to read two books together today. The first two books for the Cook Prize, and I'm going to be sending this along, but I want to show you a note page that we're going to be using to think about and remember our reactions to these books, because we're going to read each of these books, two today, two next week, the beginning of next week before spring break, and then as soon as we finished the fourth book, like I said, two in each week, you'll have the opportunity to vote on your favorite. But how do we choose a favorite? There are a lot of different ways that we look at books and see what we react to as readers. And with picture books and books about real things and real places and real people and real ideas, there are even more things that we think about to decide really how we feel one book may have been more successful in what it was doing than another book. So we're not just going to be doing like well, I like this one better. Well, why did we like this one better? Was it something in the illustrations? Was it something in the language, the words, and the way that the story was told? Did you like the characters? Did you find them especially interesting and inspiring? And so what I'm going to show you here, I have these note pages, and there's two pages. I'm going to send you this as a separate Google Doc. Here you can see this page first. And there are 4 sections for these notes. 1, 2, 3, and 4. One for each of the books that we're going to be reading. So if you are able to, if you have a printer at home, it would be best to print these out. If you don't have a printer at home, that's okay. You can just look at them on the computer and maybe write your notes down on a separate piece of paper. You're not going to be turning these in. These are going to be sort of I like to call them like a cheat sheet for when you make your vote. So we're going to be reading 2 of these books today and 2 of these books next time. And after we finish reading, after we get off the video, what you're going to do is take a look at the ones that we read today and read these prompts and decide how you felt. So I'll just read some of them to you. So the pictures related to the text. That means what was on the page in the illustrations and what was on the page in the words, did they feel like they really connected to each other? So you can, using these emojis, just circle how much you felt that was true. Big smiley face, kind of medium face, or frowny face. So from related to did not relate. Illustrations were consistent with the tone of the story. So you can decide how much you thought that was true. So the way that I think about that one is like, when you think about the tone, was it like, if it was a really like exciting story with big bold things happening, you might want to see that the illustrations match that excitement. If it was something that was um, dark and mysterious, the tone of the illustrations might match that with their color, or the like the brush strokes, or the types of lines that the author or the illustrator might have used. Sometimes it's the same as the author and illustrator are the same. I think in most of these books that we're reading, they are different authors and illustrators. Third question is, you understood all, most, or what the book was about. So that's pretty straightforward. Did you understand it? Did the author do a good job of communicating these ideas to you? The author and illustrator clearly presented facts or concepts so you understood them. So not only did you understand the story, did you understand the scientific ideas that the author was introducing to you? Some of them are very new. And lastly, the author gave you ideas about how to find out more. So is there an opportunity in this book to get more information if you're interested? And anything else you want to add? So what you'll be able to use these for is when you're making your decisions, because we're all going to vote on our favorite books at the end of reading all of them. These can kind of help you make a decision, because sometimes when you get to the last book in this, you might not remember your reaction to the first book quite so well. Sometimes the last book kind of sticks in your mind. So there's one of these for each of the books. They're all on one document, and you can fill them out after we read them. On that note, I think we should start reading. First book we're going to read is called Flower Talk. So this is the book I was thinking about when I decided to be outside today. And I actually just read this book with my son yesterday after I read all of these books, getting ready to read them to you, because we took a walk yesterday and he was looking at all the flowers and trying to find things, find interesting leaves and flowers and, little souvenirs from our walk. And so we came home and we read this book together. And this is, it is a informational book. You'll see the author uses a lot of humor in it too. So this is Flower Talk, How Plants Use Color to Communicate by Sarah Levine. Illustrations by Masha, I believe her name is pronounced Masha Dyens. Hope that's correct. And as you can see, even in the first page, you can see some of the hints about what this book might be about. There are some birds as well as lots and lots of flowers. So when you think about flowers communicating, who might they be communicating to? Okay. You might not see me quite so much because I'm going to try to hold the book far enough back that everybody can see it. Hey you, psst, down here. That's right. I'm a plant and I'm talking to you. But don't get too used to it. We don't make a habit of talking to humans. I want to clear up some of your crazy ideas about what the colors of our flowers mean. We sit here growing, minding our own business, while you guys go on about how roses are red and stand for love, and white ones are good for weddings, and all kinds of mushy, ridiculous stuff like that. What a load of fertilizer. Hi, this is my son Sammy. Can I open your snack? Hold on just a minute. Pause, everybody. Sammy, you want to say hi to my class?
Hi.
This is my son Sammy. He's at home. He's in kindergarten. Here you go. What a load of fertilizer. We're not using flowers to send information to you. So bud out, okay? We're using our flowers to talk to animals. Why? Well, we need some help down here. What would you do if your legs were stuck in the ground for your entire life? How would you eat? How would you drink? How would you get your pajamas on? How would you get your pajamas on? I don't know. Have you ever seen flowers wearing pajamas? What kind of pajamas do you think they'd wear? Here's what we would do. We trick them into carrying it for us. Well, we're nice about it. We pay them a little something for their efforts. Well, usually. And how do we get them to help? We advertise. We hold up big signs. And our flowers are those signs. They say, "Come on over. We love a special treat for you." Oh, we have a special treat for you. I'm sure that they would love a special treat too. So, all these flowers, what kind of special treat do they have for the animals who help them carry their pollen? Believe me, they come. Who wouldn't, especially if they're hungry? If we're in luck, they bring along some pollen from a flower they visited earlier. Do they know they're doing this? Well, who knows? Who cares? It works for everyone. Here's everybody in the garden. See, all these animals and plants working together, going from flower to flower and sharing their pollen. So what's the deal with the colors? That's what we really want to know with this book, right? A flower's color invites a specific animal to visit. You seem like a bright kid, so I'm going to let you in on the conversation. Then maybe you could do me a favor and tell the other humans, okay? Can we do that? Can we all agree? We can tell the other humans. You can share this with your brothers and sisters, with your parents even. Because these are things that I as an adult did not know before reading this book. Red flowers are usually talking to birds. The red flower's message is a top secret one, for birds' eyes only. Most other pollinators are insects, and they can't see the color red. A red flower says, "Hey, hummingbird, come on over here. Help me carry my pollen, and I'll give you a sip of nectar." By the way, red flowers don't have much of an odor. Birds have a horrible sense of smell, so why bother making a perfume for them? This is something I hadn't noticed before, and this is like a kind of a challenge for you. When you go out on a walk sometime or even just walk around your yard, if you see some red flowers, smell them. See if they smell, because this is something I hadn't noticed before, but I have some red flowers I'll even take you over after we finish the book, and on the side of my yard, and I noticed they're right. They don't smell at all. Especially a lot less than many other types of flowers. Blue and purple flowers talk to bees. Bees need pollen to feed their babies. They have special pockets on their legs to carry it home to their young. But some pollen always gets stuck on their bodies and passed on to the next flowers they visit. Blue and purple flowers are saying, "Yo, bee, could you help me move some of this pollen? And take some of it home to the kids." See, we can be thoughtful too. Now, can you tell who the yellow flowers are talking to? Yeah, that's what I thought. Kind of matches the way they look, right? The yellow flowers are also talking to bees. Bees are our top helpers. I heard that scientists just figured out that bees have 3 favorite colors. What do you think they are, everybody? Anyone have a guess what bees' favorite colors are? So we already know that the blue and purple flowers are talking to bees, and now we know. Yellow, too. Blue, purple, and yellow. Took you guys long enough. We've known this for ages. We, who's we? The flowers, right? That's why so many of us make flowers in these colors. We like the reliable help. Here's what a yellow flower says. "Bees, bargain basement, this way. Free food." Some white flowers are talking to moths and bats. Now, I bet some of you at home can guess why. Look at this picture. Do we know when do moths and bats usually come out? Right? At night, right? Why would white flowers be better for animals that come out at night? They can see them. White flowers might still stand out in the nighttime. Moths and bats fly mostly at night. And when it's dark outside, what color shows up best? White, of course. White flowers are like giant signs that say, "Hey, come get your free nectar here." White flowers also put out perfume that is an extra guide to help these animals find them. Frankly, I don't care for it myself, but I guess to a moth or a bat, it smells pretty good. I noticed yesterday we walked by some star jasmine, which is a small white flower, and it smells absolutely beautiful. And also right now I can show you, we'll take a little garden walk in just a minute. when we finish the book. But one of the flowers that has some amazing smell in my yard right now are the blossoms on my orange tree, and those are white. So I guess those must be talking to moths and bats. Brown flowers often talk to flies. Here's what they're saying. Get a whiff of our perfume. It's stinky, just the way you like it. This is true. Brown flowers reek like something dead and rotten. And flies need to lay their eggs on dead things so their maggot babies will have something to eat when they hatch. I know, so gross. But a brown flower doesn't help a mama fly at all. She gets drawn in by the scent, but there's no meat there, just a flower tricking a bug into doing the work for free. The flower gets pollen, but the fly gets nothing. The only thing that's rotten around here is the deal. Green flowers aren't talking to anyone. Are they just shy? No, they don't talk to animals because they don't need their help. Their pollen is carried by the wind. Plants with green flowers are just green all over because they don't need the animals to notice them. Would you bother getting dressed up if you didn't need to? I know I wouldn't. And I'm going to guess. I'm going to ask you a little question right now. How many of you are wearing your pajamas while you're not going to school? You certainly, I'm sure, are not wearing your High Point uniform. So, just like the green flowers, if you don't have to get dressed up, yeah, you're probably just staying in your comfy clothes while you're at home, right? I know that that's what I've been doing most of the time. Do animals only go to flowers that are their favorite colors? No, but they usually do. For example, butterflies are drawn to a flower's shape more than its color. Butterflies like a steady platform to land on, and tubes filled with nectar to sip with their long, curly tongues. They visit the flowers of many colors. But butterflies have favorites: white, purple, yellow, pink, orange, and red. That's a lot of favorites, don't you think? So you can actually plant butterfly gardens, gardens that are specifically made up of flowers that butterflies really like, and then you'll find that you'll get a lot of butterflies coming to visit you in that garden. It's been good chatting, but it's time for you to leave now. Go take a hike. I'm pretty busy, in case you haven't noticed. I'm making a new flower. It's going to be yellow with a nice roomy platform. I'm just about done with it. But before you leave, do you want to guess who I'm getting ready to talk to next? Here's her flower. What do you think? It's yellow. Do we remember what animals prefer yellow flowers? And it's got a nice roomy platform. Who likes to land on a nice roomy platform? Let me see on the final page. Who was it? A bee and a butterfly. So that's the end of the story, though the end of the book, like many nonfiction books, and we talked about this in the library when we were all together, especially with fourth grade. We talked about the end notes in a book that might really give you some extra information. So there's all sorts of information here, including a map of the parts of a flower, the steps of pollination here, and ways that you can protect pollinators, protect the animals that help our plants to grow and for us to have beautiful flowers and fruits too. So that is Flower Talk by Sarah Levine, How Plants Use Color to Communicate. And so when we're all finished today, you can fill out your first notes page about this one. I am going to read one more. Let's take a short walk around my garden, though, and you can see some of the flowers that I have. I'm going to take you with me. So these are some flowers that just bloomed in my yard. I'm just going to show you this quickly. I thought these were so pretty. These orange ones right here, these just a few days ago were only these little red bulbs. Let's see if I can show you. There we go. See that little bud? It almost looks like a berry. Those opened up into these beautiful orange flowers. So based on what we just read, what kind of animal do you think might be interested in visiting these flowers? I'm going to keep my eye out in the next few days. have some beautiful blossoms on my apple tree here. You can kind of see right there, there's some white and pink ones. We're going to read one more book together. Okay, so today our second book is going to be, it's very different. Well, our first book was about nature. This is a biography about engineering. So this is called The Secret Engineer, How Emily Roebling Built the Brooklyn Bridge. Now, when I was a librarian in New York, I used to go over this bridge almost every day to go to work. This is how I got to work from my house in Brooklyn. The Brooklyn Bridge is one of a few bridges that stretches across New York Harbor and from Brooklyn to Manhattan, and thousands of people cross this bridge every day. It's been there for over 100 years, and it's a pretty amazing bridge. You can walk across it and see all of the New York skyscrapers and the skyline. And this is about the family who kind of built this bridge together, and the woman who is not usually given the credit that she's probably due for being the person who really saw this project through from beginning to end. So let's read it. Secret Engineer, How Emily Roebling Built the Brooklyn Bridge by Rachel Doherty. Give us lots of room so we can see all the pictures. Emily Warren was a bright, shiny spark who loved to learn. Like many girls, she studied sewing and piano. Unlike many girls, she also studied math and science. That's a long time ago. This was probably about 100, when she was a young girl, it's probably about 140 years ago. Girls did not have the same opportunities for learning that most boys did. In time, she married a spry young engineer named Washington Roebling, whose mind was just as hungry as hers. The Roebling family built bridges. Washington's father, John A. Roebling, was considered one of the greatest engineers of his time, and now he had a risky new idea. He told Washington and Emily that he had designed a bridge to span the quick whirring waters of the East River to finally link Manhattan and Brooklyn. He planned to build 2 colossal towers and sling a 14,000-foot web of steel cables between them to create the grandest avenue the world had ever seen. John wanted to send his son to Europe to learn about new technology for building bridges, and Emily insisted that she would accompany him. In Europe, Emily and Washington explored historic towns, tasted new foods, studied the most recent advances in bridge building, the caisson. So this is the caisson. So we'll see. We'll get a look inside. So this was, as you'll see, a way that they were able to build down deep enough to secure a bridge so that it was stable enough to remain standing. A caisson is like a giant open box turned upside down and sunk into the water. The opening at the bottom traps air as the box sinks, so it's dry inside. This allows workers to dig deep into the riverbed and to find solid rock to build upon. These caissons, once fixed to the firm bedrock, form a sturdy base for the bridge's towers, strong enough to support the structure's weight. Emily and Washington hurried back to New York, buzzing with discovery. So this was like, it was basically like having a tunnel that they could put underground to keep digging and digging and digging a foundation for the bridge. Because you can't just drop a bridge into the water and hope it doesn't float away. It needs to really be secured to the strongest part of the land underneath. John wove 2 caissons into his design and prepared to build the Great Bridge. But he died before construction began in 1870. Washington, remember that's his son, would have to take over as chief engineer. The caissons were larger than any had ever been made. The base of each one measured 17,000 square feet. Just building them seemed nearly impossible, and that was only the beginning. So these are all the steps we're going to see. So first, workers built the caisson on dry land. Then they carefully float the airtight container into the river. So they're actually dropping it down into the water. Once the caisson is in place, workers sink it, displacing the water around it and trapping air inside. So it actually goes all the way down, even though it's open at the bottom, and doesn't actually let the water get inside it. When it reaches the river bottom, workers can descend and start digging. Washington soon discovered that the construction inside the caisson was muddy, dark, and sweltering work. After hours in the caisson every day, he returned home aching and dizzy, but he pressed on. Washington drew plans late into the night with Emily by his side. Emily heard that some of the other workers were falling ill, with pain, weakness, and nausea. They called it caisson sickness. Then, in 1872, Washington, like many of his workers, collapsed on the dock and had to be ferried back to his home in Brooklyn. So these are more of the steps. Here we go. As the workers dig, the caisson drops. So as they keep digging, it keeps going. It actually falls deeper and deeper into the earth. Eventually, they dig past the soft riverbed and reach the solid rock. So you can see the caisson is dropped. It used to be on the water part. Now it's actually in the mud beneath the river. Workers then fill the caisson with concrete and build the bridges and tower on top. Weeks later, Washington still couldn't get out of bed. Emily insisted that she could be his eyes and ears, and legs, and arms. As Washington's eyesight dimmed from the caisson sickness, he dictated from instructional letters to Emily, and she read the construction reports to him. Washington could breathe a little easier knowing that Emily would be at the work site. But Washington's words felt clunky and confusing when Emily repeated them to the engineers. She faithfully copied the terms and equations, but they seemed like a foreign language. She was nervous. Construction on the bridge was only the beginning. There was so much that she didn't know. So, Emily started to read. She studied bridge engineering. She learned from Washington and the assistant engineers, and as she studied, the mechanics of the bridge became clearer. The main parts of the bridge were the towers. So we can see the towers are these sturdy parts that were made out of bricks and cement, concrete. The cables, these are the metal ropes connecting them. The deck, this is the deck, the part that people would actually walk or drive on. And the anchoring blocks. One set of cables would be strung on top of the towers. They would balance the pull of the other cables that would lead from the towers and the anchoring blocks to either end of the bridge. The cables create the tension force, and the towers create the compression force. A force is an invisible push or pull that acts on an object, and together these opposite forces would hold the bridge upright. So can you see the diagram there of how this is like how the weight would be distributed and how the bridge would really be able to support what was moving over it and support itself. The more Emily learned, the more confident she felt. As time went on, she could see the drawings coming to life. She saw the steel cables swooping between the towers, and what she'd learned was called a catenary curve, the perfect natural arc of a cable held only at its end. So basically, if you take, I should have had a rope here. I was just thinking I could demonstrate it. If you take a piece of string even and just hold it loosely by either end and let it hang down the middle, that's the curve that you'll get. So the curve of, if you hold the two ends kind of across from each other and let it swoop down in the middle, you'd have that curve. Perfect natural arc of a cable held only at its end, like a clothesline or a jump rope. She saw the tiny ink scratches she'd squinted at on paper transform into huge vertical cables called suspenders, which would shift the weight of the bridge deck to the main cables. She grinned, knowing that each suspender could hold 70 tons. So these are the cables that were coming down and hanging down and connecting from these main cables down to the deck itself. She grinned, knowing that each suspender could hold 70 tons. Emily learned that the Roebling design for the bridge required a new method of steelworking that had never been used before. Cables were spun from thousands of thin steel wires twisted together. Like invincible yarn. The rigid deck pattern was studded with steel stays, cables that striped down diagonally from the towers like sunbeams. So if you walk across the Brooklyn Bridge now, which you still can, not this week, obviously, but if you ever were to visit New York sometime, you can usually walk across the Brooklyn Bridge, and you can see the way these cables sort of crisscross each other. It's amazing how sturdy it looks and feels. The rigid deck pattern was studded with steel stays, cables that striped down diagonally from the towers like sunbeams. With the tower and the deck, each diagonal line formed a triangle, the very strongest shape. No steel mill had ever been asked to make cables like these before, and the manufacturers wanted to meet Washington to make sure they understood the plans. But Washington fretted. If word got out about how sick he was, and that a woman was in charge, the project would surely be taken away from the Roeblings, despite all of their work. Yeah, you can do something else for a little while, okay?
But there's a thing.
Hang on for a minute. Okay, that's okay. You can close it, okay? Thanks, sweetie.
I'm just closing it closed.
You can just turn it off for now. You can go back to it later, okay? Emily understood his concerns, but she insisted that she could handle it. And when the meeting came, she answered all of their questions perfectly. So this was really at a time when it was very unusual for a woman to be working in a job like this, and was taken, unfortunately, less seriously than her male colleagues. We're hoping that most of the time that is no longer true. More than 10 years had passed since Emily had taken the reins, and the bridge was nearly built. She saw the main cables stretching across the wide river. From her window they looked as delicate as spider silk, but she thought proudly of the equations that she'd studied to calculate the cable's strength. Just before the bridge was set to open to the public, who had never seen a bridge this large, she began to worry. What if the skinny wires look too weak? The river is too wide, they said. Everyone will fall into the water and drown. I might have been nervous like that to see something so incredibly massive, unlike anything that had been built before. You know what? You can stand in the same spot right now, and you can see that exact view of this bridge. I actually was there last summer, standing right in that spot, and it's still standing. Emily insisted they were wrong. She trusted the thickness and the strength of the steel cables, the stability of the diagonal stays, the balance of the anchorage blocks against the towers. She knew the equations by heart. A week before the grand opening, Emily rode in an open carriage on the first trip across the finished bridge. She carried a rooster in her lap as a symbol of victory. When the Brooklyn Bridge opened on May 24, 1883, the two cities set off rockets and fireworks. Bands played from steamboats below all night long. Crowds gathered on both riverbanks and boats in between to celebrate the great feat of engineering, never knowing about the contributions of an insistent woman named Emily Roebling. So she didn't get credit for being the engineer behind this bridge. Her husband and her father-in-law did. And this is the end of the story. So I'm actually going to read this author's note really quickly. It's not illustrated, so I'm just going to read it aloud to you. As a child, the author says, I was a stream of questions. Why do crabs walk sideways? How do kites stay up? What makes traffic lights? My parents filled bookshelves with biographies and encyclopedias, and I fell in love with the real men and women of history who answered my questions. Some biographies began so impressively that I knew right from the first page that the subject was special. But my favorites have always been the underdogs, the ones who have greatness dropped in their laps, and that's how I came to love Emily Roebling. So there's additional information about her, a glossary of some terms, things like caisson and caisson sickness. So caisson sickness was a real thing that many of the mostly men who were working on the bridge and in other similar engineering projects came down with. Um, this is actually, it says why that happens. It says an illness caused by nitrogen bubbles that form in the body when a person moves too quickly from an area with high pressure, such as deep underwater, to an area with lower pressure, such as the water's surface. Called decompression sickness, or the bends today, it can affect scuba divers. So this was not something that was in their heads. It was not a coincidence. It was really caused by going deep, 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 deep underground and under the water where there was very high pressure and then back up to the surface again very quickly. So that was what was making them sick. And here, finally, lastly, are some photographs of the Brooklyn Bridge when it was first being built. And here's some pictures of it today, or recently. So I hope you enjoyed these two books. We'll be reading two more next week. And I know that was a lot to take in one lesson, kind of long today. We don't usually go quite that long, but I hope you enjoy those books. You can go now to the forms that I sent you and either print them out or just sort of take notes on a piece of paper so that next time when we read the other two books, which I'll show you today, we'll be reading this book called Mario and the Hole in the Sky, How a Chemist Saved Our Planet, and Hedy Lamar's Double Life, Hollywood Legend and Brilliant Inventor. These are two more biographies, probably more similar to the book about Emily Roebling. But we can compare our thoughts on all of them, and then I will send you online voting forms next week as well. So you'll be able to vote from home. We can talk about once everybody's voted, we can see which book came in first, which book was sort of the class favorite. I'll be able to see by grade, by class, and even be able to compare. We're going to submit these to the Grader Cook Prize. I'm going to send them in, and they'll add these to all the counts from all the other schools that are participating, and we can see if the book that we chose is the same as the books that won overall and the books that other schools chose. My old school in New York is participating as well, and I thought it would be fun to maybe compare some of our results to theirs and even maybe see if there's a way that you guys, the fourth grade students, and maybe some of the fifth and third graders as well, can talk to the other students about these books that we read together. So I hope everybody's doing well. I miss you all, and I hope everybody is staying healthy and safe. And if you have any questions at all, or just want to share with me what you've been reading, or ask for recommendations, or anything like that, you can email me anytime. And I will be checking in with you next week. Bye, everybody.